Well, a very warm welcome back. It's Andrew Eborn here, delighted to be joined again by financial journalist, founder of moneymagpie.com, and brilliant investor in all sorts of exciting things, including putting gold in biscuit tins. Jasmine Birtles, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I want to look, the budget is coming up. Everybody's very anticipating this. And we've been talking about the effect that the Labour Party has had on the UK economy so far. What is your view on that?
Yes, it hasn't been good already. And it's an interesting thing with the economy and with business. I mean, I run a business, as you know, I run moneymagpie.com. It's Money Magpie Limited. I have employees. And so I often look at things from the point of view of businesses as well as individuals. And much of it is about confidence or lack of confidence. You can talk about actual figures and facts, but they don't matter as much as perception and the perception of, how things are going and how they're going to go. And if businesses and individuals are confident, then they spend. If they're not confident, then they don't spend. And one of the first issues I think that the Labour Party has created is a sense of doom and gloom. They came into power and frankly, understandably, and if I'm honest, I probably would have done the same myself. They've immediately blamed the Conservatives for everything, and they've said there's a black hole. The economy is really hard. It's going to be tough. We're going to have to have a lot of taxes. I mean, already with the Conservatives, supposed low tax Conservatives, we had insane levels of income tax, national insurance. The whole lot's gone up. But now Labour is basically, they have been warning us and putting fear in the system, saying we're going to increase taxes, it's going to be terrible. They're now sort of folding back and going, oh no, there won't be austerity. No, 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 we're not going to have that. But in large measure, the damage has been done because we are all worried that there's going to be yet more taxation, and that we're also worried, many of us, those who haven't voted Labour, we're worried that they're going to start spending again in areas that we don't want them to spend. So, for example, already in taking money from the pensioners in their winter fuel payment, which, and there are arguments for, definitely very strong arguments for that move, by the way. But in doing that, they're saying, and that money that we're saving there, we're putting into the civil service. Now, of course, a lot of people are happy for nurses to get a pay rise, doctors, junior doctors, maybe teachers. I think teachers have rather less public support now than they used to. But the pen pushers in the various sort of civil service departments, nobody really wants them to have that. So already we are seeing, I think, a concern that not only are those who are working, and particularly those who are earning well, going to be punished for earning well by being overtaxed, but there's the direction of travel seems to be, as it often is with Labour, that they put money into the civil service and they are told by the unions where to put the money. So this is all, I think, a concern for a lot of people, and it's already not helping the economy. It's putting a sort of a gloomy sense around the economy, and so people have stopped spending quite so much.
And it is worrying, isn't it? And during the election process and the various canvassing, all the Labour people said, we won't raise taxes for the ordinary working man. And I said, well, look out for those weasel words. When they said that, have they basically lied to us?
Well, I honestly, yeah, what a surprise. I mean, imagine MPs, political types lying, saying they'll do one thing before they get into power and then immediately doing the opposite. I mean, it hasn't helped on that subject, it hasn't helped that already, and they've only been in power for what, 3 months or so. We've had all these sort of taking money scandals, which again, Starmer and his team said, oh, definitely the Labour Party wouldn't do that. Oh gosh, no, they're immediately doing it. It's extraordinary. Noses in the trough. So, immediately they've lost a lot of support from their own supporters, the people who've actually brought them in. So Yeah, there is a problem there, I think. As you say, they said that they would be the low tax party, but already we're seeing that they're going to put up taxes. Sorry, I'm just going to cough.
I think the hypocrisy has a knock-on effect from everybody. So we understand when people are coughing or choking whenever you work on that sort of basis. There we go. But back with us. So all good stuff. No, but you're right. I mean, this is what happens about politicians is that I always say, look, trust comes in on foot but leaves on horseback, and trust in the media, in the police, in politicians is at an all-time low. And they always say you can tell when a politician's lying because their mouths are moving, and you get this sort of thing, and it's come back to bite them. And the optics on it, Jasmine, are appalling because you have all these things about these big donations which are coming out to Keir Starmer, and the latest revelation about him staying in this multi-million-pound penthouse to do his podcast, not as effective as your or my podcast, but he did it there. And that's the problem, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Because I think, a lot of people, certainly if you're in the media, you know that you all sorts of people get given things. Journalists get given things all the time. Models get them, actors get them, whatever. So MPs get given stuff. Of course they do. There's a whole, it's obvious reasons why people want to be friendly with them. And so that's one thing. But if you're a party that said we're whiter than white, we're not going to do that, then there's a problem when they take it. If they were conservatives, people would go, oh, it's a typical conservatives, because you kind of expect it from them, but you don't. Well, we've been told not to expect it from the Labour Party, and as you say, it's the optics, saying one thing, doing another. People can smell hypocrisy, and they don't like it. It's one of the things that we dislike the most, I think, about other
Yeah.
individuals.
I think you're right. It's not just smelling hypocrisy. I think this is why Sir Keir Starmer and his free gear Starmer, the two tier as they say, it's probably why he needs these thousands of pounds spent on spectacles. That you can't just smell it, but you can also see it, and the
Yes.
hypocrisy and work on that sort of basis. But looking at those specific financial policies and drill down into those and the impact that they have on the financial market. What are the real killers, if you like, on that point of view, and what is driving the financial markets as a result?
Well, I'm thinking of the financial markets and also individual investors. I mean, one of the things that we've seen already is that the rich people are leaving the country. We've lost around 5,000, top millionaires already, and it's not just the Labour government. It's primarily them, but of course, non-doms have left because of the Conservatives who removed, the non-dom status. They made it much less attractive for non-dom millionaires to stay here. And you could say, well, good riddance, rich people there, who cares? We're actually going to be losing more apparently before the end of the year. But the problem there is that they pay tax. They don't pay as much tax as they should. There are a lot of arguments about, rich people with expensive accountants, particularly the billionaires who pay nothing like the tax they probably should do, but they do pay tax. And in this country, the top 1% of earners pay 30% of the tax. So the more of these very rich people that leave who have been paying tax, I mean, one of them, and I'm not a fan, but Charlie Mullins, the
Yes,
Pimlico Planners
he's
guy.
a regular on the show. You say you're not a fan, he's a fan of yours.
Oh, is he? Bless him. Well, suddenly I'm a fan then in that case. Um, so he's leaving, he's made a big fuss about the fact that he's leaving. And he pointed out that he has paid over 120 million pounds worth of tax in this country. Well, I'd quite like him to carry on paying that. I'd quite like these rich people to stay and pay that money, because the more that go, the more likely it is that you and I are going to have that burden, and anybody watching this is going to have more of a tax burden
Yeah,
because there are fewer people to share the load.
yeah,
And it seems, according to the Labour Party, because of their spending and the various things that they want to give money to, they want to increase the taxes, particularly on the rich. And when I say rich, it's people who are just on sort of, I would say, five-figure salaries, really. Those on 70, 80 grand, which you would think, oh, that's quite a lot of money. In London, that's not. And they're the ones that particularly that are going to bear the brunt. And what I've found with quite a lot of people that I know who are, they're earning a decent amount. Either they are actively thinking about which country to move to, whether it's Dubai or Switzerland or Cyprus or Jersey or whatever, and they're not multi millionaires. They're just, earning a decent amount of money, or they're thinking, I think I might just not bother. I think I'll just retire. I had one person who one of my Money Magpie readers who wrote to me. He's in his 50s and he said he's a surveyor in the city. And he said last year, because of bonuses and everything, I made £500,000 and 250 million of that was paid in taxes.
Right.
And he said, what's the point? What is the point? He said, all I care about now is building up my pension so that I can take early retirement, because there is no point in me working for the government. I don't work for the government. I don't want them to have half the money. Now, you might think, £250,000, that's a good amount of money. But it's really, really irritating to have to give the government £250,000 to waste in their own special way.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see more and more people either leaving or not working, just
Yeah.
just taking early retirement, or doing a bit of a go slow, or thinking, well, I won't bother with it. I'll just go and do something that
Yeah,
pays
we,
less
we
and I
we
haven't worked.
need to incentivize people, don't we? And exactly, I mean, as I say, Charlie Mullins is a regular on this show as well. It's always interesting to get the different perspective. But you're right. If the 1% pay 30% of the whole tax, if they disappear elsewhere, the knock-on effect, the net
Yes.
knock-on effect for people is quite horrendous, isn't it?
Well, it really is, and the ordinary working people, as you say, what do they actually mean by ordinary? I mean, you and I would describe myself as an ordinary working
You're
person.
not ordinary, you're extraordinary. It's got to be
I work, I earn.
right.
And so, and I'd like to earn more, frankly. It's difficult in the media, but you can work at it. But if I did, I would then be charged. I mean, last year, I'm freelance, and last year I didn't earn much money. This year I'm not earning, but the year before I earned a goodly amount, and suddenly I have this huge tax bill. Because that's what happens, as you know, when you're freelance, it goes up and down, and
Yes.
you're taxed retrospectively. And so it always happens, the year that you've done really badly, suddenly you get lumped with a massive great tax bill. But at that point, it made me think, what did I work for? I'm not working for the government. I'm working for me. Why do I have to pay so much to the government? And then when you're doing that, when you pay a lot of money, like this reader who said, half his money went to the government, then you start looking at what the government spends it on, and you think, well, I don't want them to spend on that. For example, at the moment, this government, like the last government, has promised £3 billion a year to Ukraine to help the Ukrainians kill themselves more efficiently. I have been totally against the Ukraine war from the start. I have never agreed that my tax money should go to pay for a war, like particularly a war that can't be won like that. It's just, and lining Zelensky's pockets and paying for Nazis to have a happy time. That's not something I agreed to. And 11.5 billion, at least 11.5 billion to other countries to help with net zero projects. I mean, again, that's going to line the pockets of various dodgy NGOs. We don't have the money to give away to other countries to waste in their way. And then, as I say, spending extra money on the civil service, I'm not that happy about that. The Conservatives poured money into the NHS. It did nothing. I mean, the NHS costs us about, I think it's $250,000, no, 250 billion a year, something like that. It's around 240, 250. It's an insane amount of money. We need to really look at that. And then the state pension. I mean, I agree with pensioners having money, but honestly, as a nation, we can't, like most Western countries, we cannot afford the current and future state pension bill. Its state pension costs us about, I think it's 120 billion. It was about 100 or so, but they put it up by 8% last year. So it's a huge amount of money, and we trust, or we have trusted the government, various governments, to manage the public purse in the right way. I haven't trusted them for a few years now, and I certainly don't trust them now. I certainly don't trust the Labour Party generally. I don't like their ideas. I don't believe in what they're saying. That that they should overtax, punishment tax the rich because they will go and, give lots of money to the public sector. That's going to be a waste. So I don't feel happy personally about what they're doing with the tax money. And I think more and more people are feeling the same way. And the more tax you pay, the more you're critical you're going to be about the way the government's doing, what they're doing with that money.
No, no, it makes a lot of sense. Now we talked about that hemorrhaging these millionaires to other countries. Whereabouts are they relocating?
Well, certainly Dubai, because with Dubai there are no personal taxes. There's a flat fee of 9% on corporate tax, but otherwise no tax. And from what I hear, I've never been to Dubai myself. I'd like to visit for not for very long.
Yes, it's
Not my.
Disneyland for adults. I have been there. I stayed at the Atlantis Hotel, which is.
Oh, fun, yes.
And I'll tell you the fun thing about it is that it has this one slide. It goes down from the zillionth floor, and it goes through this shark of tanks. And when when the children saw that, they said, "You've got to try this slide." I dislocated my thumb, so I came up with the most enormous thumb
Oh no,
afterwards. But it's basically Disneyland for adults. I loved it.
yes.
I'm not sure I'd want to live there, but I love Dubai.
Well, quite, yes. And I've got friends who live there. I've got one friend who is a multimillionaire who lives there. He's French. He goes, I live there for 182 days a year. I know it's not very well. I have to be down. So he's there, and then he's in Croatia, and then he's in France and various places, sort of completely cutting down on tax. And I've got other people who live there who love it. So you love it or hate it, and it's very, very active. It's a really happening place. One of my friends who lives there says it's like London was sort of back in the 80s. It's really happening. Also Switzerland, because they have very good tax regimes. Italy is an interesting one. They're open arms to rich foreigners. They're offering a flat fee of 100,000 euros per year tax, whatever you're making, and that's very attractive to a lot of very rich people. Cyprus is a good one. Jersey, they have relatively low levels. A friend of mine who's Indian who lives in this country, and he's a multimillionaire, and he's looking around because he's thinking, how long am I going to stay in Britain? And he's saying possibly Spain, because they'll give you 5 years where you don't have to pay tax on any of your non-Spanish income. So he was saying, he might go from one country might go to Spain for 5 years, and when that finishes, he'll move on to Italy or, whichever country is offering, a decent. Portugal is offering something similar. So there are countries around that are going, oh, rich people, they're saying the same thing. Oh, rich people, they'll spend lots of money in our area.
Right.
They'll buy up the property, and if we'll get them to pay a little bit of tax relative to how much they earn. But 100 grand a year, I've never paid 100 grand a year in tax. I don't earn enough, to pay that. So that's still a decent amount of money, even though it's nowhere near what you might think these rich people should be
Sure.
paying. But it's still a decent amount of
Oh
cash
no,
tax.
absolutely. And I always say don't let the tax tail wag the dog, because you've got to look at the consequences of
Yes.
relocating to these places. How many days do you have to spend? And as you do, you talk to a number of people who do this, and they have to work out. Oh, how about I've only got 2 days left, and I've got to go somewhere else. It's quite tricky, isn't it?
It's a hassle, isn't it? Yes, I've got a Russian friend, Nastia, who lives 6 months of the year in Bali,
Right.
4 months of the year in Britain. She's got houses in both places, and then the other 2 months, sort of bit of Dubai, bit of Russia, and various. And that's fine if you can do. If you've got a family, it's very difficult, And I don't know. It makes me feel tired to listen to it. You've got to move here, you've got to move there. I like to be in one place, basically. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But there has, as you say, there's going to be a knock-on effect for hemorrhaging all these millionaires. As you say, the 1% pay 30% of the tax. We've got Rachel Reeves' budget coming along soon. What should we expect?
Well, this is the thing. Funnily enough, I was giving a talk the other day about how to defend your how to protect your wealth before the budget, and ultimately my conclusion was to do nothing, frankly, because we don't know, and I don't think Rachel at this stage Rachel Reeves knows exactly what she's going to do. because on the one hand, as I say, they've been saying, "Ooh, we're going to tax you. We're really going to tax you. We're going to tax the rich." There've been all sorts of rumors about property, particularly, if you're a buy-to-let landlord, that landlords are going to be really hammered. But there are quite a lot of Labour MPs who have a lot of property themselves. I mean, there's that one made me laugh. I can't remember his name, but he's got various properties, and he wasn't even they had damp and mold in them, and he wasn't even up with the licenses that he himself had imposed on landlords. So there are quite a few Labour MPs who have decent amount of property, so that might not happen. There's also been rumours that we'll be taxed on our own property, the one property that you live in, which would be horrendous. Nobody would move if that happened. So I suspect that won't happen. They're saying that they won't increase income tax rates and national insurance. Well, they don't have to, because if you just keep the freezing that was set up by Sunak, as wages go up, taxes will go up as well. They've also said, but that does mean CGT, capital gains tax, which you pay when you make a profit on selling something like a property, buy-to-let property, or shares, or I don't know, big car or something. If you make money on it, you pay capital gains tax, and they are saying that they will increase that. That's the rumors. These are all rumors, and we don't know if any of it's happening. But I think, one thing that I've found with since the Blair government, particularly, all governments now have, rather than coming up with policies and going for them like Thatcher did and saying, tough if you don't like it, this is what we're doing, they've all sort of leaked things in the press, that we're going to do
Yes.
this. And then they gauge the mood of the people, and if the people go, "Ooh, no, not," they go, "Oh no, we weren't going to do that. No, that was just a rumor. That was just, no, we're
Right.
not." So I kind of get the feeling that this is happening with the budget. They're all going, right, we're going to tax everybody's property, and they'll go, "Oh, no, 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 oh no, we won't do that." So I suspect that Rachel Reeves has got her rubber and pencil out, going, "Oh, scrub that one. We're going to have to do this." So I suspect that the budget won't be as swinging, as tax friendly as we're all afraid that it will be. I could be wrong, but that's my
Well,
theory.
it is interesting, Jasmine, as well, though, isn't it? Because we say, look, the millionaires going away with their millions, we're no longer going to have that. Rachel Reeves has got to be seeing this hemorrhaging and say, well, hang about,
Yes,
I'm losing 30% of what I
yes.
previously got. I've got to get that from somewhere to pay for
Mhm.
all those services. What's going to be the greatest thing at risk? If you were in her position, what would you look at?
I probably would look at inheritance tax, to be honest. I mean, at the moment, it is an unfair tax, but all taxes are unfair. All taxes are unfair to somebody. You just have to think about what works. And income tax is a really harmful tax, I consider, because you disincentivize people, and what they're talking about at the moment of putting higher rate tax on higher earners is a real disincentive. I mean, it's a philosophical idea. As you know, back in, wasn't it in the 70s, they put super tax
Yes.
on the very rich, and they all left. I
Yeah.
mean, the Rolling Stones left. There are all sorts of. Somebody was telling me about how all these celebrities left. It simply does not work. So you might think, oh, that's fair. I don't think it's fair, but a lot of people do. They think, oh, you earn more, you should be having to exponentially pay more. Um, but but it doesn't work. So something like inheritance tax, okay, you can get around it. There are various ways to get around it. But I think that one potentially it's an easier one to get at, and it could bring in quite a lot more money from not so many people,
Yeah.
because only 4% have it. And it doesn't materially affect our productivity. See, VAT, I'm not happy about VAT. That's particularly harming high street shops, high street businesses that are already on their uppers. So you have to think, what works, what would actually harm the economy, what would disincentivize people from working, what would disincentivize people from uh, amassing wealth. and try not to do those and go for the bits around the edges that would have less harm. I mean, as I say, all taxes do harm, but you just have to try and find the ones that will do the least amount of harm, I think.
Or upset the least percentage of people, if you like. And
Yes,
inheritance tax was certainly, I was somebody who vocally said during the campaign that we should actually abolish it. It brings in
yes,
about
yes,
7%, oh, so 7 billion, I think it is brought in through inheritance tax. But
yes,
basically, and people, as people's houses increase, and their estates, you've paid for something throughout your whole life. You've saved
yes,
up lots of money. You've been taxed
yes,
on that money throughout the rest of your life. And then all of a sudden, when you die, your
yes.
estate is hit with this massive tax. That's not fair, is it?
Well, you're right. No, it isn't. And it's the same with capital gains tax because, with capital gains tax, you've earned money, you've paid tax on that money. You then invest in something sensibly, you invest in property, you invest in shares, you invest in artworks or whatever. Then you sell it, you make a bit of a profit, and you have to pay tax on that again. I absolutely agree. And it is an unfair. I've got a friend who doesn't earn much money at all, but her parents they were waiters, and they saved up, saved up, saved up. They bought a flat in Earl's Court in London. This was back in the 70s, I think, 70s, 80s. And when they both died and she inherited it, she's a PA. She earns very little money, and she's got a 70,000 pound inheritance tax bill, which she hasn't been able to pay. So it's going up and up. She's going to have to sell the flat at some point, and that's where she lives. And she'll have to downsize a bit. So yeah, it is really, really unfair. I know, how you mean. But then somebody who comes from a family that hasn't got anything and has not inherited anything, they go, well, why shouldn't you pay? You've inherited that. You didn't
And,
work for it.
and that certainly used to be the case, Jasmine, until you suddenly look at the thresholds and people who
Yeah.
are basically asset rich but cash poor. And I'm
Yes.
thinking
Yes.
particularly about property, houses, and so on and so
Mhm.
forth. Where you look at that, and actually it's hitting far more people. Just run us through the current rules.
Well, yes, if you, to be honest, they keep changing. They're a little bit confusing, but basically, anything over £325,000, you have to pay inheritance tax on it at 40%. However, there are various rules, like if one parent dies and
Yeah.
then another one does, you can sort of double that amount. It can potentially, with all sorts of extra little loopholes, go up to about 900,000, depending on how things have gone, when each parent died and all that sort of thing. Um, but the basic is 325,000. And in other countries, I mean, in France and Germany, I think it's about 1 million is the basis, 1 million euros.
Yes.
And in Germany, people don't really own their own homes. So, inheritance tax isn't one that they think about. But, as we're talking about tax, what bothers me now, really, because we're kind of moving the deck chairs around the Titanic here by saying, which tax, because they're all harmful. All the taxes are harmful. And I think the problem that we have now is that we have such big government. We have such a huge societal burden, if you like, so much spending, various government, and this government wants an even bigger government. They want to have even more control, which is a nightmare scenario, I think. Because of that, the tax burden is going up in order to fund these various projects and various promises that various governments, not just this one, but conservative governments, whatever, have made to various sections of the population. So that combined with the fact that we now have 100% debt to GDP ratio in this country. So our national debt is equal to our gross domestic product, the amount of money that we make. So a lot of the money that, excuse me, is brought in with taxes is increasingly being spent on servicing that debt, because the debt, the bonds that they issued in order to get this money are maturing, and they're having to pay more money for new bonds. Basically the interest payments are going up. So we, the workers and the owners of wealth, are being taxed in order to fund a bloated society, I think, bloated civil service, a bloated government. and also to pay the interest on this big debt. So again, the whole concept of us all paying taxes on all sorts of things, I think, need to be completely revisited. They won't be, because that's, political suicide, but that's what we should do, I think.
I think I always say that the more that people understand these things, the better. So, in summary, you're saying effectively Rachel Reeves herself probably doesn't know yet. They're drip feeding potential policies and seeing how people might react to those. That's the usual sort of way of doing things. And the Clinton approach, if you like, say it's going to be far worse, and then hopefully make sure it's not. They have a lot of questions to answer. Finally, I mean, what advice in this sort of uncertain market would you give people at home as to what steps they should be taking before the budget?
Well, it is a very much a wait and see budget. It's the usual. Try and get yourself try and pay down a bit of debt. Make sure that you do have money in different areas. Diversify your portfolio, as they always
Ah,
say.
we've heard that one
Spread your
before.
bets. Yes, exactly. Spread your bets. Make sure you don't have too much in cash, in savings. I'm increasingly against keeping money in the banks. I don't trust the banks. Yeah, I'm rather disgusted by a lot of their behavior, particularly demanding reasons for us taking money out, which a lot of them are doing at the moment. There's the potential at some point, if we do have an economic, financial crash, economic as well, but particularly financial crash, that the banks will demand a bail in. In other words, they take our money in order to shore themselves up. So
Right.
just don't have too much money in cash in banks. And I think, gold, as we've been saying in the past, gold, I think, is a good place to put some of your money, as well as, other areas. And I wouldn't necessarily rush to buy another property just at the moment. Let's see what comes in the budget, and then think about property.
Fantastic. Well, we'll get you back to discuss all of that. Just remind people, Jasmine, how to get hold of you.
Well, there's my website, moneymagpie.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jasmine, just Jasmine. I joined in 2006, so I got Jasmine.
Hooray, well done.
Yes, whereas on TikTok and Instagram, I'm Jasmine Birtles, so do come and follow me there.
It's brilliant. Jasmine, it's always a joy to have you on the program. Look forward to having you next time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.